Hello and welcome to this game review. So, if you only have one loss in the whole week, that's of course pretty good. So, this was of course a very avoidable loss, and it is quite simple to avoid such losses, but it does require a fundamental shift in the thinking process, and this will require you to kind of double the amount of moves you're thinking about. And what I'm talking about is thinking about the opponent's moves, not only your own. So, we are taught to look for our own checks, captures, and attacks. But of course, chess gets a lot more difficult when we start thinking about the opponent's moves as well. And this was what was required to not lose this game. So here, firstly, d6. I mean, I understand you always play this, but we must understand that the sooner we start fighting for the center in the opening, the better. So in either case, at some point we will have to start playing e5 or c5 because we cannot allow white to get the center like this for free in every game because d6 doesn't help us with either of our three goals, which are to castle the king, to develop the pieces, and to fight for the center. So now knight c3, knight f6. Of course, white should just play d4. There's nothing special here. He plays queen f3, which also violates the principle of developing the queen early. Knight c6, bishop b5, g6. And he doubles the pawns here, which doesn't really do too much, as we get the bishop pair, and we didn't really have to work for it. Bishop g7, bishop g5, and bishop g4. So this is of course possible, and yeah, we should in general develop with tempo if possible. But here, the bishop, as you mentioned, it doesn't really do anything, and it will very easily be kicked away. Instead, we should try to achieve the goal of castling. And if they castle queenside, well, congratulations, now we win an exchange due to a skewer tactic. So white will have to waste some kind of time to not allow bishop g4. And in general, in the opening, we must castle the king. And now you played d5. And of course, it makes sense to fight for the center, but in general, again, we shouldn't fight for the center so much when we haven't castled yet. Okay, he plays f3, but this allows a fork. Instead, knight g2, so should of course be played developing the knight, while also not allowing the fork. And now, black does have some kind of weaknesses here. He hasn't castled. White hasn't made any huge mistakes yet, so he should be more or less fine. After f3, d4, now black is the first one to start attacking. After this, of course, white should take the piece, to at least not be a piece down, and after this, black does have a strong pawn on b2, but white does kind of survive if he finishes development, as this pawn is not really becoming a queen anytime soon. But now, black just has to move the bishop, and he is up a piece. So now we get to this position, and now we have to realize our piece advantage, right? And there are certain steps to this. The first step is to stabilize the position and get the king castled and not allow any tricks. And then try to exchange pieces, develop pieces, and just go from there. But here black plays knight h5, which just simply doesn't make sense. Why are we putting the knight on the side of the board if it's not going to do anything? Why are we not just castling? Again, chess is already a difficult game, so we shouldn't complicate matters where they don't have to be complicated. And here clearly black needs to castle at some point, so we should. And some kind of h4, I mean, it shouldn't really work out for white, as he has only 3 pieces attacking. We have 4 defenders. We can just continue our own initiatives. Okay, knight h5, and now castles g4. Now the knight has to go back. And now had white played h4, this would make a bit more sense than in the previous variation, because we wasted a few moves with the knight. Okay, queen c5, queen d6, white exchanges, so this is of course great. So castles, and the game should be easily winning, but we don't have to do anything special. We have to exchange pieces, improve pieces, and just play normal positional chess. h5, I mean, it's possible, but it's not really necessary to open up our king like this. Instead, we have an open file where we're not just putting rooks on the open file, just invade through the b file, attack weaknesses, and take stuff, and fight for the center as well. But okay, h5 is a bit abstract. He takes, knight takes, bishop e7. So you mentioned you knew he'd take that pawn and figured you'd get compensation back when you went to the 7th rank. But again, why are we complicating matters so much? Why was this necessary? Why are we even sacrificing a pawn on e7 and on d6? Because we're already down a pawn for the piece. If we lose 2 more pawns, we won't even have a material advantage anymore. So again, there is no reason to complicate things. We must look for the easiest solutions that are available, especially when we don't have to prove anything. We are a piece up already. We don't have to outplay the opponent. We just have to use what we already have. And now, for some reason, white is getting 2 pawns. And of course, black is still better because his pieces are better placed. But why are we giving up 2 pawns? Now rook a b8, and black continues picking up pawns, exchanging pieces. This is all fine. And we get to this position, and we hear white could already try to get black to go wrong with this check. And here black has only one good move, which is king h7. After which this is not a check. If he plays here, this would already lose. But for some reason, he takes with the bishop, and black takes here, rook b2, and then rook goes to a4, and preparing some kind of check, etc. But again, we have to understand how we can lose this position, or how we can not win it, right? Because we're a piece up for nothing. So we have to understand that if both sides play perfectly, we should be able to win. But of course, with a piece up, we don't even have to play perfectly. What we have to do, though, is to imagine some kind of scenario where something can go wrong and avoid it. And after bishop e5, the scenario is very close. Here, we should have understood this pattern of the rook being on h8 with the king on h7, which would be checkmate. But even if we don't do this, we cannot just play c5, right? This is a huge blunder in thought process. This means that we're absolutely not looking at the opponent's moves at all. Because if we think about the opponent's moves, similar to our own moves, we always have to start with the forcing moves, the checks, captures, and attacks. So what did you assume the opponent was going to play? If we look at the opponent's checks at all, and rook b8, we will soon find out that this is checkmate, which means this simply cannot be allowed. And there are many ways to avoid this, but this kind of mistake will repeat itself for your whole career if you don't deal with this kind of thought process mistakes. You're not the only one playing this game, right? So you must respect the opponent, as he also might have some kind of ideas. Even if he is a piece down, none of your pieces are helping with the opponent's plans. So here, of course, you should play f6 or something. But yeah, after c5, the opponent gives the only check in the position. Not like there were a lot of things to calculate here. This is the only check. And now you say there's nothing to do, you're horrified. But this cannot continue, right? If we want to play good chess, we must not be surprised by some kind of checks. We must always see the opponent's checks before they happen on the board. As now, as you mentioned, it is too late, and this is checkmate. So this was completely avoidable. There are a few things that went wrong. Black got a bit impatient and a bit optimistic that the position will win itself, but the opponent did not give up, and he tried to create his own counterplay somehow, at least trying to trick the opponent. And if you get checkmated, then it doesn't matter how many pieces you have, checkmate is checkmate. So for your next training game, I would suggest trying to look for the opponent's forcing moves, and give yourself a goal of always seeing the opponent's checks, captures, and attacks, at least 2 of them on every single move, so that before you're making a move, you can imagine that you've made the move, and then think about the opponent's checks, and this way you will avoid blunders just like this.